Hello and welcome to today's topic, Setting Improvement Objectives. My name is Glenn Clark, aka the ISO Guy, and in today's video we're going to cover a topic that surprisingly seems to give a lot of organizations a lot of heartburn and teach you how to approach it the right way. We will start by looking at what the standards require for setting these objectives. They need to be set by top management. They need to support the strategic direction of the company. They should follow the SMART objectives model of being specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-specific. They need to be communicated to the organization, and they need to be documented. One critical change that went largely unnoticed in the last round of revisions of the ISO standards is the fact that you now need to put a plan in place to achieve these objectives. I guess hope is no longer an effective strategy. Who knew? Within that planning, you need to define what will be done, what resources will be required in order to carry out this plan. Define who is responsible for the elements of the plan. Put a time period on when it will be completed, which could include multiple milestone events. Define how the results will be measured and evaluated. You will also need to look at the impact of the proposed changes on the management system, which means going through your change management process to ensure these plans will not negatively affect other areas of the business. So now that we understand the requirements, what should we do? You will want to take a top-down approach as opposed to a bottom-up approach. This isn't to say that improvement suggestions from lower levels of an organization could not be significant and that you do not want to action them. But these people often are not privy to the strategic direction of the company, and therefore these improvements may not be all that relevant. You will oftentimes need to drill down one or two layers to come up with a specific objective that supports the organization's strategic direction. Commonly, organizations will want to achieve a certain level of growth or profitability. You need to determine the specific factors that support that outcome. Let's take a look at some examples of what those different types of objectives could look like. The standard gives us great flexibility in what types of objectives we set. Most commonly, organizations look at relative or absolute improvements. Some examples of these could be reducing scrap rates by 3% compared to last year, or increasing on-time delivery to 99% next year. It could be lowering the percentage of people that click the link on a phishing test email by 2% per year for the next 5 years, or utilizing at least 50% of your energy usage from renewable sources by 2030. Note that the timeframes of the objectives can be both short-term and long-term, and it is often best to have a mix of both. For new implementations, it is important that you start setting these objectives early on in the process to give time to build evidence of your performance against them. Reduction in risk is another potential form of improvement where we are going to lower either the likelihood or severity of an unwanted occurrence. If, for example, we were to invest in a backup system or piece of equipment so that if the first one went down for a period of time, we were still able to meet our customers' requirements, that would be a good example of a risk reduction. The key is that it needs to be measurable, so you would reflect this by lowering the severity of the impact of the failure of that piece of equipment in your risk register. Diversification is another area of risk management that you could look to set objectives in. Some examples could be looking to change the sector mix of your clients. The 2008-2009 financial downturn had a disproportionate impact on companies that were heavily involved in the automotive sector, for example. So maybe you want to look at diversifying into other sectors to lower your risk. You could also look at your product mix. Organizations that are entirely reliant on a single product or service can be at risk, so targeting to achieve a certain ratio of products and services can reduce that risk. Lastly, you may want to look at your customer base. Many organizations are dangerously reliant on a single customer for a large proportion of their revenue, to a point where losing that customer poses a massive risk to their business. A question I get a lot is, how many objectives should I look to set? There's no required number, but keep it reasonable, less than 5 generally, although this will vary depending on the size of the business. Remember how formal this process is in terms of all the elements that you need to plan out and track. All companies must prioritize, and you can set yourself up for failure by trying to prioritize too many objectives. This doesn't mean, however, that you cannot improve in other areas, or that any metrics that you track must have an improvement objective associated with them. Oftentimes, it is the monitoring of these metrics that leads to your future improvement objectives. If after watching this video you feel like you could use some support in developing your improvement objectives, please reach out to the team at Seratos, as they have worked with many organizations to develop relevant objectives that bring out the best in their organizations. I strive to bring you entertaining and educational material in a very concise format. If you liked this video, make sure to give it a like. If you didn't like it, make sure to share it with someone else, as I'm sure they'll like it. Please comment below what you learned from the video and let me know if there are any topics you would like to see covered in a future video. If you want to see more videos like this, be sure to subscribe, and if you hate being the last to know, make sure to turn on notifications. Thank you, and goodbye.